Welcome to the HBR IdeaCast. I'm Adi Ignatius, Editor-in-Chief of Harvard Business Review, and I'm joined here today by Jiro Nonaka, Professor Emeritus at Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo, and by Hiro Takeuchi, who is a professor at Harvard Business School. The two are co-authors of a piece in the latest Harvard Business Review called The Wise Leader: How CEOs Can Learn Practical Wisdom to Help Them Do What's Right for Their Companies and for Society. So I want to thank you both for being here today. In this article, you were critical of the values that were manifested maybe in Wall Street, maybe elsewhere with the recent global economic meltdown. So there's probably a big gap between the kind of ideal you're describing and the reality, at least, of sort of Western capitalism. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the practical steps? How do we get from where we are to where we would be if we follow this sort of wise leader paradigm?
The question we would ask firms is, do you have a moral purpose? And that's sort of the beginning of thinking about the common good. It's not only economic benefits, but societal benefits. And even if you look at a product like the Nano, which Tata has come up with, the beginning was Ratan Tata standing in the streets of Mumbai and saying, why are these families wet on a motorcycle? Can we do something for these poor families? And the only solution was coming out with a $2,500 car. So he had a very strong moral purpose to it, and profit came probably as a result. So I think it's the order of which you think of profitability, either as a result or the goal. And I think the goal is one of providing common good.
But again, just to follow up on that, so I think some companies, some leaders would say, look, my responsibility, I've been tasked with maximizing the share price, delivering value to our shareholders. This all sounds very good, but I have to do that first before I can, think about the common good. But I think people would like to understand this way of thinking. So what would you say to someone who makes that argument?
We recommend leaders to be idealistic pragmatists. So at the very end, you have to be very pragmatic. And of course, without earning a profit, there may not be any reason for you to be in existence. But I think the important thing is being an idealistic pragmatist. So stretching your moral purpose and reaching for maybe the impossible.
So you talk in your article about practical wisdom, and you use the term phronesis. Please explain to our audience, what exactly is that, and maybe you could give some examples of that form of knowledge.
Phronesis is originated by Aristotle. Translated both practical wisdom and also prudence. It is the habit of making the right decisions and taking right action in a particular context. It's also the habit of relentless pursuing excellence for the common good.
I guess, how does one cultivate these capabilities inside a company?
Through very close interactions. I think you need human interactions to really cultivate these kinds of capabilities. You almost need some kind of an apprenticeship. You really have to kind of work together, because sharing context means you got to be there at the same time. So I don't think there's any easy way. You need to really spend time one-on-one and through a lot of real life experiences.
But ultimately, are we talking about, is this a skill, a trait that would manifest itself at the highest levels of an organization, or is it possible to cultivate wise leadership throughout an organization?
Example, John Chambers has been transforming Cisco from a top-down command and control company to the teamwork and the collaboration. But he connected communities of distributed leaders. Cisco is the best possible model for a new large global business can operate as a distributed idea engine where leadership emerges organically, unfettered by a central command. Leading from the middle is the biggest change in the management of the company ever. We are growing ideas, but we are growing people as well. He said, I might have had 2 potential successors. I now have 500.
Let me ask now the term phronesis, as you said, traces to Aristotle. But in some ways, reading this piece, the concept as adapted seemed very Japanese. So I'd like to ask, I mean, do you think Western companies and executives could really get behind this?
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's basically a Western philosophy. And I think the Japanese saw a very strong similarity in the Confucian ethics, in the Taoism that emanated in China, and said, hey, this is practical, but at the same time, we are pursuing an ideal. So I think the pursuit of ideal is universal.
Making the right decision and taking right action in a particular context is very universal. The balancing 2 extremes and also dialectically judgment rather than decision. Decision is like a computer. It's the act of information processing. However, judgment, we have to sense the context behind phenomena, which is usually invisible. So this capability is not typically Japanese. It's come from Aristotle and developed into the field of political science and education. And also Hiro pointed out, there are some commonality like Confucius or Bushido. Step by step, very pragmatic, but toward common good, to realize relentless pursuit for excellence.
If somebody is moved by your article and wants to become a wise leader, what practical advice would you offer?
One is emphasis on liberal arts, you know, the philosophy, history, literature, and so on. Because to read the context behind the phenomena, the most critical explicit knowledge is not management how-to, but liberal arts. The one of wise men who stressed the role of liberal arts is Peter Drucker. When I visited his house and looked at the bookshelf, very little management how-to. First, literature, and also history by Brodel, and then philosophies and so on. And other pillar is share the very critical moment of their challenge. So they articulate, share the most challenging context and judgment and reflection.
It pays to have the liberal arts background, to share your life experiences with others, and to really form a network among your peers. This, I think, can be done anywhere, not only in Japan.
I want to thank you both for a really interesting discussion. For more on this topic, The Wise Leader, it's an article in the latest issue of Harvard Business Review by Jiro Nonaka and Hiro Takeuchi. Please go to hbr.org.